A professional opera singer with the Lyric Opera in Chicago gets involved in the collective bargaining process on behalf of the artists. He gets a taste for negotiation and mediation, decides to become a professional mediator, get trained up, and start his own practice. And it all works out. If he can make that transition, you can start your own practice too. This is How to Start and Run a Law Firm. I'm Mark Lyda. My guest today is Matthew Carroll. He's a great guy, great story, good friend. I think you'll really enjoy hearing from him. He also sings the national anthem at Chicago Bulls games, by the way. This is a relevant episode to anyone. Even though it's a mediation practice, we talk about a lot of actionable steps you can take, especially when it comes to getting clients, Google ads, referral sources, things like that. Very actionable stuff. Let's dive in. Matthew Carroll is the co-owner of Keystone Mediation based in Dyer, Indiana, and he handles commercial and family mediations. He also teaches mediations as an adjunct lecturer at Northwestern University School of Professional Studies, which is where we met as students. Very interestingly, he came to the mediation world in a very unconventional way. He has a background as a professional musician, an illustrious 18-year career as a Grammy and Emmy award-winning professional musician, and served as a labor negotiator for the American Guild of Musical Artists. And that's how he got his first taste of the mediation and negotiation process that sort of whet his appetite for it, and he made this incredible career shift. I want to hear all about it today. Matthew Carroll, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Good to see you, bud.
All right, so let's start out with your story and tell us your thought process of where that seed for the idea began of you making this huge shift, because it's been really cool to watch you pull it off. You know, we met when you were getting trained to become a mediator, but even take us a few steps back before that for when you got the idea and decided to actually pursue it.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was 2019 or 18? I think it was 2018.
I think you're right.
We were at Northwestern together, but no, thanks for having me on. As you mentioned, I used to negotiate contracts for the Performing Arts Union, and it's a very frustrating process, the whole collective bargaining process. Very positional, where one person wants, one side wants you to take a pay cut, the other side wants a raise. And so you start off at impasse and nothing really gets accomplished. It's a huge waste of time. Everybody becomes resentful towards one another, and it doesn't set up a really great work environment. And when you reach impasse, at that time, the FMCS mediators would come in. Now, FMCS has been I don't know if you know this, but it's been completely axed by DOJ. There is no more FMCS. That was the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Services. So they don't exist anymore. But they came in, anytime there's a work stoppage in America, FMCS would come in and send their federal mediators to try to help resolve it, to avoid a lockout or avoid a strike. It's usually associated with labor. And so FMCS were kind of the quiet people in the background that often helped prevent strikes and work stoppages, which is good for America because we don't want work stoppages. So they would come in and they would change the narrative of the conversation, which I loved. They would change it from a positional based, I want a raise, I want a pay cut, to what do you need? And break it down into a needs-based conversation instead of a positional-based conversation, which often led to a lot more creative solutions. And then it became more of a teamwork feel instead of an us versus them feel. And I loved it. I fell in love with the process. I asked the federal mediator at the time if I could take him out to coffee as long as I don't talk about the case, because I'm really interested in mediation. I want to find out how to become a mediator, what kind of training. And he was the one that told me, look into a law degree, look into a master's in alternative dispute resolution, look at Northwestern. And he's the one that kind of pointed me in the direction. And so I remember sitting in that class. That was one of the very first mediation classes that I took, the one with you. And, I'm in this class with mostly lawyers, and I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Like, I'm a professional musician, and this is all above my head. But Yeah, I tell this to my students a lot. If anything, I'm proof in the pudding that this is possible, that you're
Hmm.
capable of learning these things.
This podcast is presented by Practiced, modern law practice management software. We built Practiced at my firm because we were tired of fighting our software. Workarounds, clunky systems, way too much admin. So we built our own, and it cut our admin time by over 70%. Practiced makes running a law firm feel lighter. Intake is fast. Engagement letters just work. Time, tasks, and expenses stop piling up. And Practiced's AI assistant can do anything a human assistant can do inside the system. You can also hand it your messy notes, forms, or questionnaires, and it generates clean, polished documents using your templates. Or just forward an email and a new matter appears. Practiced even helps you get more clients through marketing and advanced referral network features. Everything works right out of the box, no separate software for intake and case management, one system, no duct tape. And it's just $20 a month. All features, no add-ons, no nickel and diming. Get started in minutes at practiced.io. That's practist.io.
You and I have spoken in the past about how law school doesn't prepare you how to start a firm. And it's no different with mediation training. You can take all the mediation training in the world, but there's still a business. They're still hanging your shingle. They're still learning, okay, now that I have all these skills, how do I apply them?
Absolutely.
It's been a challenge. There's been some swings and misses, and there's been some successes. But I'm on year 7 now. We founded the company in 2019, and through a series of mistakes and learning. And I like to tell people, go out and make your own mistakes. Just make different ones than I did. Learn from me, and then go make your own mistakes.
There we go. All right. So yeah, that's absolutely the purpose of this podcast, is to fill in those gaps. Like you said, in mediation training, we learned how to mediate, not how to start a mediation practice. And attorney or not, this is a very relevant episode for anyone who is looking to hang their own shingle in anything, or attorneys who are looking to make the transition into becoming a mediator, which I know is something that appeals to a lot of attorneys who are sick of the conflict and want to do something that is sort of healing in a way and productive as mediation can be. So, all right. So we're going to fill in some of those gaps and talk about how people can apply the skills that they've learned. All right. You mentioned mistakes. What are some mistakes that you would advise people to avoid?
That's a good question. It's mostly marketing, right? Like, know who your audience is. Who are you marketing to? I think of the wasted money and the wasted campaigns that I did marketing to targeting certain groups, like bar associations, like being a little naive in this field. I didn't realize that most firms already have their set mediators, who they use, who the practice is used for years and years and years. You're not going to cut into that market. So save your money marketing to them. The other thing too is although AI is constantly learning and it's a fabulous tool, it's to no surprise, it's wrong a lot. And so I relied a little too heavily on AI when it came to marketing campaigns, terminology to market, buzzwords, keywords to market. I was marketing things like divorce without attorneys, and it was, maybe $2.70 a click, only to find out later on, because that's what AI was suggesting that I use to market, only to find out later on through websites like SEMrush and other websites that track a lot of this stuff. There were maybe 20 people across the state of Indiana searching for that term. So why am I paying all of this money, up to, X amount of money, $2,000-$3,000 a month for my budget, trying to get the 17 people that are Googling it? So that was kind of a learning curve too, is not relying on AI. AI is great for like generating what your campaign's going to be, but maybe not so great as to keyword searches, not so great as to SEO optimization, things of that nature. I think AI, it's relying more on that open source and not necessarily on the data that you need to find. So that was some of the mistakes, I think, of the money that I spent on marketing campaigns that was completely wasted.
And specifically, you're talking about marketing keywords for people who don't realize you're talking about Google Ads for the most part, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And those are pretty difficult to understand and to do well. So what are the resources you have found to help you? You mentioned research websites and so forth. What's worked for you?
Yeah, I think SEMrush is a great website. Backlinko is another one because they're
How do you spell that, by the way?
Oh, SEMrush, SEMRUSH.com. It's expensive, but you can get a free trial for a month, and it's definitely worth it to look at what people are searching for in your area, what people are searching for in your state. It helped me realize that a lot of people are looking for information. They want to know how to fill out the forms, how to initiate a divorce. That changed my marketing, because then I can target that marketing. I can target and say, are you confused about what forms to fill out? Leave it in the hands of a professional. Even if you don't want to hire an attorney and you don't want it to be contentious. Mediation in general has its own pros and cons, but for the most part, it's mostly pros. The drawback to mediation is people often don't know it's an option. So educating the public, what is mediation? How do you do it through a neutral versus hiring two attorneys? And what would the process look like if we still want to hire attorneys, but want to go through the mediation process? So it's more about educating the public, and that direct consumer marketing is going to be huge. I can't tell you how many times, Mark, people were like, I was searching for a divorce lawyer near me, and I saw your website pop up, and I read about it and was like, oh, look at all the 5-star reviews. This sounds like a lot better. Why are we going to blow up our finances? How's this going to make your relationship as co-parents any better when you have nothing but resentment? Because when you litigate, somebody wins and somebody loses. And that person that loses, they're not going to feel very good about their co-parent. And those poor children are in the middle for the rest of their lives. Mediation can help prevent that, because as you remember from the training, we're separating the person from the problem. Like, listen, it sucks when a marriage ends. It does. Like, divorce in general is one of the strangest processes that exists out there. A lot of my clients anyway, when they come in for a consultation, they don't realize when you file for divorce, you're suing the other person. And especially if they've never been to court before, it seems harsh, because it is. The caption, mom versus dad, or dad versus mom. Right. How is that conducive to families, right? Why are we setting up a war model right at the beginning to terminate a legal marriage? There's a better alternative, and that alternative is through mediation with a neutral, somebody, a professional guide that still helps you through the process. It doesn't mean it's kumbaya in here. There's arguments all the time. I mean, huge arguments. But that's where, like, the tools in the tool belt that we learned as a mediator is really going to help facilitate that conversation. So, reshaping the thought of divorce, re-educating the public, that's been one of my biggest challenges, because, you're up against a pretty strong, like a salmon swimming upstream. And you and I talked about this. If you don't have legal professionals in your area that are even willing to mediate, if they think like, hey, I can get my client a lot more in court, you very well may. You can zealously advocate for your client in court. You may get the extra 10,000, but they might be spending 30,000 to win 10. So how does that make sense, right? And then how's that going to affect your relationship with your co-parent? So that's been probably my biggest challenge, is just shifting from marketing to professional organizations to direct to consumer marketing. And it seems to be working pretty well.
Yeah. Okay. And, one of the things that has improved with technology is that the crawlers and the algorithm for what returns Google search results, they continue to improve. And how they improve is by prioritizing and bumping up to the top of the list search results and websites that provide actual value. They actually measure how long people stay on websites when they click there. And so when you're offering education like you just did and like you do on your website for people, that actually helps your search engine optimization. Another thing that helps SEO are backlinks. What was the backlink website that you mentioned?
Backlinko. It's a way to connect with other professional firms, professional businesses, to share blog posts, to backlink content on one another's website. The thought of it is that think of it as like a spider web. You want to expand your web across the World Wide Web so that if somebody in California or somebody in Texas reads your guest blog on a website, that's going to drive more content back to your website. And so those backlinks are important to expand your community. LinkedIn is important, especially in the professional community. Social media is still king. I mean, Facebook ads are still resonating well. And believe it or not, they're really cheap is Bing. Bing ads, they're like 7, 10, 15 cents a click versus $7 a click on Google. And more people with advanced degrees use Bing than any other web platform, which is really interesting.
What?
I have a theory on that. I think it's because people with advanced degrees get a job where the company is providing them with a Microsoft computer, right?
Yeah.
And Bing is the default search engine. And so I think that might be why more people with advanced degrees use Bing. However, it's been very cheap to advertise on Bing, and I've had a lot of really great results. And to your point, that is one of the things I love about technology, because I can track how many minutes people are spending on my landing page. I can tell what blog entries they're reading and that gives me an idea. Like there's one blog that's very popular around tax time, and that's about like how your taxes are affected by divorce. That's one of the top blogs that's read on my website, which means I can now advertise on Google Ads for something along those lines. Like, hey, are you curious as to how your taxes can be affected by divorce? Here's Keystone Mediation, and it drives traffic to that blog, which then drives traffic to my website.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about the customer relationship and that customer intimacy piece and just getting to know your customer. That's all about it. I mean, you're understanding them better based on what they're reading, and the technology, it's not just technology for technology's sake. It's a way of deepening your understanding of them and their understanding of you. And so much about building a successful business where everyone's happy, both the customer and the service provider, is about having a good fit between customer and product or service. And so you really help do that too. And when people are finding you for sort of the right reasons and realizing that you're aligned and you're a good fit with one another, they're more likely to be happy customers at the end of the day and leave you a good review.
That's right. And you're hitting a solid point on this, because lead generation is important, right? But they need to be quality leads, because I did a marketing thing one time where I was generating a ton of leads, but they weren't great leads. Like these were people that were blowing me off for consultations, or they would start the process and quit halfway through.
Yeah.
So yes, you need to know your market. You need to have clarity as to who you're targeting, right? Who is your ideal client? And then you can build a profile, an advertising profile based on that. And that's where AI is going to be very helpful. Like, help me identify my ideal client. What kind of leads are you looking for? You know, you could say like, I want to target people with master's degrees or higher, or If you want to target higher income earners, then if you're going to target those higher income earners, then how does it benefit that they use you? You know, you look at Jeff Bezos, you look at Bill Gates, they both mediated their divorce. And there's a reason why they did that. There's a reason why they didn't litigate. They didn't want that stuff drugged through the public, because now it's all public record, all their accounts, all their assets, all the ugly stuff, right? So if you're going to advertise towards those higher end clients, then why should they be picking you? Why should they be picking mediation? It's confidential. There's not going to be any court reporter typing up a transcript that can be Googled or found by public searches, right? So like, let's resolve it all in-house and file what we need to file to the court and resolve this quietly. So you have to know your niche, right? And that's the other thing too. The big thing right now is niche marketing. You know, a friend of mine, she markets, her specialty is she is a mediator between parents and schools for mediating special education plans. So if you have a kid with special needs and you're searching for like help, you're going to find that niche. There are mediators that have a niche for gray divorces, you know, people that are 55 plus. That's a big thing right now. So that niche marketing, which you can't do as much as an attorney because you can't say you're a specialist, right? But you can as a mediator. And that might be where like creating a separate LLC from you have your law practice, and that's where you practice your law, but then set up a separate LLC for just your ADR practice. And for those of you watching, ADR stands for Alternative Dispute Resolution. So if you are going to offer mediation or arbitration, you can set that up as a separate LLC, and then you can advertise for that niche marketing. And that's a big thing that I've learned. Also, longer phrases on Google search are cheaper. The longer the phrase, the cheaper it is per click. So for example, I advertise, how do I change my child support order? How do I modify my child support when my kid is emancipated or when my kid turns 18? I have those long searches advertised because then they're only 3-4 cents a click. And then when somebody's Googling it, they're finding me first, right? And so to your point, it's like, it's this whole algorithm that constantly changes and how to stay ahead of it. And now we have AI SEO, right? Which is advertising through AI. And I don't know.
We should explain what you mean by that. It's like
you're typing
AI
something in the
summaries.
chat GPT,
right?
And then it'll say, and this is how I know I hit it big, Mark, because I was on chat GPT and I did some kind of search about mediation, or I was typing something about mediation, and chat GPT came back and said, according to Keystone Mediation.
All right.
And I was like, what's that do? I made it big.
So, and what you're doing, so if I'm listening to this and I've got a brand new practice or a small practice, or I'm thinking about doing a practice, I'm maybe getting a little overwhelmed thinking, he's done all this stuff. How do I even begin? So one thing, you've got a website and you are just posting articles of your thoughts as blog posts on your website. That's one thing. What are the other like big first steps that somebody could take to follow the things you've done right?
Yeah, that's a great question, because when you're first starting out, it takes 2 to 3 months for clients to find you on an organic search. And that organic search, you're probably not going to be found on page 1 on a Google search because you don't have the Google reviews yet. You don't have the traffic yet. So when you're first starting out, the important piece there is how to pay for Google ads, and how, because Google ads is going to fill in the gap until you can be found on an organic search. So what am I going to be paying for my advertising? How are clients going to find me? And that's where you're going to want to do that research on SEMrush to look up, what are people even Googling, and then what sets you apart, right? Because there's a ton of attorneys out there. Why are they picking you? And especially because you don't have any Google reviews yet. So why are they picking, right? What's your background? Or if you are newer out of school, right? Or or you've pivoted, then why are they choosing you? You know, what's unique about you? You know, it's going to be a more, whatever it is, I'm going to give you more attention, or because I don't have a huge client load, that's more individual time with one another, or compassion, right? I have compassion for what you go through. For me, my niche is, this is all I do. I only mediate. So I'm not out doing wrongful death lawsuits. I'm not out doing, accident and divorce and wills and estates. And I'm only doing mediation. That's it. So that's kind of my niche. That's my kind of cut. And it's like, I always say, if you find out you have a brain tumor, are you going to let your general physician do the surgery, or are you going to let a brain surgeon do your brain surgery, right? So that's where I can advertise that a little bit as my niche, as my specialty, because that's all I do. And it helps saying that, listen, I was a student at Northwestern and now I teach the class, right? I also teach at Aurora University. I'm very passionate because I see firsthand how this benefits people. I've seen both sides. I've seen how litigation destroys families, right? How it completely just, seeing people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars over 3 or 4 years makes no sense, right? Just to get a divorce. Like, yes, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. But is it okay to litigate, until you're out of money, till you hate your co-parent, and the children are just bounced around like ping pong balls? Like, that's not okay.
And a victory, if you want to call it a victory, doesn't make litigation worth it. It's a horrible experience, civil or family law, commercial law, whatever. Litigation is a terrible experience, even if you win. It just is.
Absolutely. And that's where like that reality testing portion of what we do as mediators is going to be huge, especially on the civil side, right? Because it's going to be like, okay, what case law are you going to argue? What's going to be your argument here? What are you basing it off of? Are you sure that that's what that case means? Are you finding it on ChatGPT? How much time is it going to take for your attorney to and the paralegals to dig into this to form your legal strategy? Is it worth the stress? Is it worth, all of this? That being said, though, too, like, yes, I can see why some attorneys are like, I don't want my client, giving up something that I feel pretty confident that we're going to win. But there's also a price to winning, right?
That's right.
And also attorneys have needs and interests too, because they take a pretty big cut out of any kind of award, right? So they might have motivation not to settle for themselves because they know they're going to get 40% of that award. Why should my client settle for $200,000 when I'm going to be pulling in 2.5, right? It makes sense.
And I'll note, we can't do, for example, contingency fees on family law cases in Colorado. At least last time I checked, I don't do family law, but sometimes it's sort of functions like that where the fees might be deferred until there's an award or whatever. But there's certainly, regardless of the specific regulations in your jurisdiction, you're likely to, there's a sort of an almost inherent conflict of interest between attorney and client, just because there's always an incentive for the attorney to keep the conflict going.
Absolutely. That's right. And that's where like that direct to consumer marketing, or at least the education piece of it, right? Like, listen, and litigation's always available. It's always available. If mediation doesn't work, you can always fall back to litigating, right? So there's no harm in at least trying it, because the data is very clear as to the percentage of people that are satisfied with mediation. It's like 85%. And there's a reason for that. It's because A, the process works, but B, they're creating an agreement that's unique to them. It's like a fingerprint to them and their family that's going to work for them. It's also like, especially here in Indiana, it's a way to keep government out of your life. That's a big thing that I learned how to market here in Indiana. It's like, hey, do you want to keep government out of your life with your divorce? Consider mediation.
That's knowing your customer as well.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them philosophically, but they're your future customer, right? And so, like,
Right.
I have needs and interests too.
You know, I think I got us a little distracted with my ranting about litigation as well. But okay, so you're talking about Google Ads and how they're effective before you have Google reviews, which uh, Google has so many different products. It can be a little bit of like, there's some research just to be done to know the various ways in which you are transacting business through Google. So Google
Yeah.
Ads is where you pay for an advertisement in Google search results.
Right. Correct.
Or they have other ways of placing ads as well.
Well, it's like when you Google it and you see where it says sponsored, like the
Sponsored.
first 5 or 6, those are the
Yeah.
people that pay. Those are the businesses that paid for the Google ad.
Now, a separate Google product, and you don't have to pay for this one, is Google My Business, which
Mhm.
is where you sort of claim your business on Google. And the result, at least as the time of this recording, is where you see your Google reviews on that sort of right-hand side pane when if you were to Google Light a law firm, that's where you'd see it.
Mhm.
And when you claim your business on Google, you have to verify your address, which takes a little bit of doing. And you can do it as a service area business, which I recommend if you're doing a virtual office, by the way, because then you don't have a street address where they can send you a postcard to verify your address, or sometimes they require you to take a video of your address. But if you do a service area business, you can just say, I sort of serve these counties. And anyway, you claim your business on Google, then you have your Google My Business page, and it will give you a link that then you can share with clients to ask for reviews. Some people are ethically concerned, or there's some, at least maybe not so much these days, but in the past there has been some consternation about the ethics of asking for reviews. Obviously, when we are asking for reviews from clients, we want to do it in a professional manner, and we always want to make sure to advise our clients not to reveal attorney-client privileged information in their public review. But the truth is, many law firms' lifeblood is their Google reviews. You have shareable links from Google My Business. I just wanted to clarify for the listener, for the viewer, that's a totally separate product from Google Ads.
It is. And the Google My Business has some pretty good analytics too. I mean, there's a lot of data that shows what pages they're landing on and how much traffic is coming. And it might not be as detailed as some of the third party, but it's still pretty good as to like shaping what that Google advertisement campaign that you're going to do, the Google Analytics and the Google My Business. And to your point about it is a slippery slope when it comes to ethics and reviews, right? Soliciting reviews, maybe not. But if what I do is I put the link to and I say, if you want to leave me a review, there's no pressure. I also want to recognize that this is a confidential process. So not everybody wants to leave a review that they got divorced. And I get that. But it's also, as a small business owner, that's how people find me. So if you want to leave a review, you can. I think ethically, the people that pay for 5-star reviews, I have a problem with that. I'll take $500 off your bill for a 5-star review. But also, as a business owner, be mindful who you're sharing that link with. If you had a client that maybe wasn't so happy with your services, you're probably not going to want to share that link with that client, right? So be a little strategic with who you share. If you had a great rapport with a client and you guys really got along, then absolutely, that's the person you want to share that link with. But if they're like already grousing that you didn't do this right, or it took you forever, or you filed too many continuances, then that might not be the person you share that link with.
Okay, so my ideal flow for closing a case for any small business owner, for closing a client relationship, a customer relationship, would be this. the customer receives an email saying this matter has concluded and asks in so many words, were you happy with the service that you received? Maybe you have a net promoter score. How likely on a scale of 1 to 10 are you to recommend us? By the way, I heard somewhere that the national average for attorneys is a 25% net promoter score, which is abysmal, which shows you how bad a process litigation is. But anyway, okay, so the ideal flow is you send an email to the client. This has concluded. That's good practice to sort of have a written ending. And then were you happy with the service you received? If they say, they can either say yes, no, or rate it 1 to 10. If they say no, then it says, then the flow would be, we're so sorry to hear that. Please provide us with any feedback we can use to improve. And that is shared privately with the business. And then you can take that feedback to heart and do what you will with it. But if they say yes, then the flow forks to, we're so happy to hear that. If you are so inclined, here's our Google review link. Yeah, exactly. So then the idea would be to gently receive private negative feedback, but give the opportunity for positive public feedback.
Yeah, because if we're not dedicated to growth, then we need to look in the mirror too, right? Because nobody's perfect. And for whatever reason, if it's a personality conflict or whatever it is, there's something to be learned from that case, right? But my flow at the end is very similar. Plus, it needs, like if you have a contract, it needs to fulfill your contractual obligations too. So, letting people know, for example, once their divorce is finalized, and here's how you can access your paperwork signed by the judge, and thank you for your hard work together. How did I do 1 through 10? Yada yada. That is required by me because my contract says that that's when my services end. My services end when I send that email. Once the judge signs everything, the contract's terminated. So I want to make sure I'm fulfilling my contractual obligations too at the end of the process.
Yeah, another thing, on that point, another thing I preach is having a contract. We call them engagement letters or a fee agreement. It amazes me how many that there are still lawyers who don't do that, but it's so important for protecting yourself, defining the relationship, setting expectations, all of those things.
Absolutely. I mediate a lot of attorney fee cases, and those are cases where client wasn't happy with their representation, so they decided not to pay their attorney. The attorney petitions to the court for their fees, and then the judge kicks it to me to mediate. So I'm often mediating a lot of these client attorney cases, and the number one complaint that I hear is that my attorney didn't listen to me and just went and did their own thing, and I wasn't on board with a lot of this stuff. And the attorney will say, but that's why you hired me. You hired me to zealously advocate for you, and that's what I did. And that's the problem with zealous advocacy, is that it's a subjective term. It needs to be defined because every attorney has a different definition of zealous advocacy. Like Mark Lyda, his definition of zealous advocacy is I'm going to promote mediation to my clients first because I'm advocating for my client to try to resolve this peacefully on their terms and without destroying their finances. Another attorney might say, my job is to zealously advocate for you, meaning I'm going to fight for you because you may lack the skills that I have and the knowledge that I have. So therefore, you're hiring me to take over. And so zealous advocacy, that subjective term needs to be defined. Because it isn't defined and because everybody has a different definition, that's why I mediate a ton of these cases.
Yes. So, okay. That's such a good point. And that's how the client relationship begins. But you also mentioned with those fee cases, it will be a judge kicking it to you. So let's talk about that as a source of cases. So we've talked about marketing directly to consumers, right? Directly to clients and customers. What about referral sources where you might be on a panel with a court, or you might be on the website of a company where they have sort of a panel that they can refer people to. What have you found works and doesn't work in that area?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think there is definitely a market out there. I'm a professional partner of Hello Divorce. Aaron Levine started Hello Divorce. It's now available in 50 states. And basically what they offer is to stay out of court to resolve your divorce, whether it be through mediation or settlement conference. They have legal professionals, attorneys, licensed attorneys in all 50 states. They have paralegals that can draft documents in all 50 states, mediators. That's one source. There's a competitive market now for that. Hello Divorce was kind of the pioneer, but now we have the Amicable Divorce Network. We've got Divorced Girls Smiling. There's a lot of different organizations that are now kind of vying for this internet-based Google searches. And because they can pool their resources, their advertising power is going to be a lot greater, right? So that's a referral source. So becoming a partner with one of these professional organizations, that's a referral source. To your point,
and that's just literally Googling what you think your customers will be Googling, seeing what the startups and tech companies are out there servicing it. And if there's a professional partner piece, or you can get on the panel, particularly if you can do it without like paying them, maybe, it's just a resource they offer or something like that. You just reach out to them and ask.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. I think they charge, $350, $400 an hour. They pay me $200 an hour. So that's how they make money.
And obviously it's subject to, there are different ethical rules for fee splitting in every state, and you got to check that out. But you Google what you think your customers are Googling, and you reach out to companies to see about partnering. Okay, go on.
That's right. Court referrals, that, most judicial officers, they once swam in the pool. And so they know a lot of the attorneys who they want to assign it to. They know people who have good track records. When you're a newer mediator, whether you're an attorney or not, the best advice that I have is go introduce yourself to your local judges. Find out the process to get on their roster. How can they assign you? Tell the judge what your specialty is. No different than how you're advertising online. Like, why should the judge pick you? Are you really good with, are you a mental health expert and you're really good with kids? Or are you a financial person, a CDFA, for example? And so the judge can then say, oh, okay, well, this is a difficult financial one. I'm going to assign it to this person because this is their specialty. Or this is a difficult one because of the kids. I'm going to assign it to this person because of their background. They're not going to know your background. They're not going to know your specialty unless you go talk to them. Most judicial officers don't want to have to make these decisions for people. They would rather people work this out and settle it on their own. That's a lot of judges will tell you it doesn't make any sense that you want them. They know you the least to make these decisions, but they will if they have to. They want you to make them, right? So marketing to those judges, finding out what the requirements are, reading your local rules, something as simple as that. What are the local rules? What's the county rule? What's the state rule? Make sure you're following the ADR rules. If you have ADR rules, if you have the Uniform Mediation Act, and what are the rules of the Uniform Mediation Act? And then just networking, becoming active in your local bar association, becoming active in your local chamber of commerce, becoming active with your state bar association, or if there's like a mediation firm or professional organization in your state. I became the president of the Indiana Association of Mediators. I joined and then ended up becoming more involved and eventually got elected president. And now I'm able to shape how mediation is practiced throughout this state. And that's huge. So change can happen. But one of the things you have to understand as a startup business person, you have to have realistic expectations as to what your goals are, the revenue you're going to make year 1 through 3. Have a realistic expectation. And hopefully you can exceed it. And if you don't, that doesn't mean you failed. It just means it's really difficult to cut into something when people have their favorites, or they have the, it's already established professionals, and you're the new person on the block. So it's to be expected. But that's where you have to figure out, what's your niche? What is your niche? What are you offering differently than the tried and true people that have had, 20,000 cases, right? They're probably not going to care about you as much as I am, because you're 20,001 to them, right?
Yeah.
So know your marketing, know your niche. That's the important thing. Why do people want to hire you personally, your firm?
Yeah.
For me, why do they want to mediate over litigating, right? So I'm selling mediation. I'm selling myself. I'm selling that I do just this. This is the only thing I do. I'm the president of the Indiana Association of Mediators. I teach it at multiple universities. And the reason why I do all this is because I see firsthand how this helps families. I wouldn't believe in it so much if I haven't seen that. The amount of post-decree filings from mediated agreements are so low. So few people file, and when they do, it's usually a modification of support, and that's it. And it's the exact opposite for litigation. Somebody lost, so that means they're going to be filing, and that's what we call that never-ending hamster wheel of litigation, right? At some point, we have to recognize that we as practitioners are part of the problem and not part of the solution. And so to your point, a lot of my students at Northwestern are attorneys because they are burnt out from litigation. They are sick of litigating. They've reached a max for themselves. There's a reason why addiction and alcohol use and suicide rates are so high in the field, because when you're surrounded by this type of fighting nonstop, it takes its toll. And there's alternatives out there. I mean, again, mediation doesn't mean everybody's kumbaya in here, but it's different, right? I'm helping people solve a problem together, a puzzle. It's like, listen, let's figure this out. This is like, let's take your feelings about each other away for a minute and let's figure out the puzzle, because that's what needs solved here. And every puzzle is going to look a little different.
Three points that you've brought up. One, about expectation setting for yourself when you are starting your business. It takes what it takes. So you can't go into starting a business with the attitude of, well, I'll hang up my shingle and see if this works out for me. It's not going to work out for you. You have to make it work out. And it may not take what you expected it to take. It may take more. It may take different activity. It takes what it takes. And if you're determined to do it, you can do it, but you have to be willing to just accept that it takes what it takes. Second point is, you were talking about a judge referring a case to somebody. If it's a financial case, they'll refer it to, somebody who specializes in financial mediation. Put yourself in that judge's shoes. It is nice for that judge. It is a luxury. It is a resource to be able to say, oh, I know somebody who's really good in this, and I know they'll do a good job for these litigants if I refer them to this person. When you, as a professional services provider, offer yourself to a referral source, you're doing a service to that referral source, whether it is a tech company like Hello Divorce, or it is a judge, or it is just another attorney or mediator who might refer you some cases. You're a wonderful resource for them. They want to have good people to refer cases to. So think of like the positive thing you're offering there.
Judges have needs and interests too, and they're usually elected, right? And if they want to get reelected, then that means, yes, they have to have a trusted services provider network. Because if they don't, if they refer a mediator, they refer an attorney, well, they can't refer attorneys, but if they refer out and it's a terrible experience, that
Yeah.
falls back on the judge, and that judge might not get reelected because it's like, oh, well, this is a terrible judge.
Yeah,
So
and elected or
partners have
not,
to
I
be
mean, they all want positive results from their cases, and when you refer a case to a different professional services advisor or provider, in one way or another, the service that the clients receive reflects back on you if you're the one who
right,
referred them. So you really
right,
you're providing a service when you're offering yourself to others as, hey, you can refer cases to me and I'll do a good job for the people you refer to me.
that's
And
right.
then the third point is you were talking about reaching out to tech companies, for example. You were talking about going down to the courthouse and introducing yourselves. I really preach keeping track of all those activities and gamifying it, giving yourself points for those activities. And I just want to point out those are classic examples of things that you should be giving yourself points for, because
Yeah,
that's the type of motion that works. Taking action works. Thinking about stuff or just learning forever without taking action won't work. You got to take big action and create a lot of opportunities for luck for yourself.
I agree. Well,
Yeah.
going back to point one, it's important to have a business plan. And that's where AI is going to be very helpful.
Mm.
Go into Claude or Chat GPT or Gemini and say, realistically, I'm starting a brand new law firm. I'm going to be focusing on family law. I'm going to be focusing on trusts and assets. And realistically, what should my year one projection be in terms of revenue? What are my upfront business costs on average going to look like? Because when you first start out, I mean, you're making 40 cents to a dollar, right? 60% ish is going back to the business.
That's right.
Google costs a lot. I think that was probably one of the biggest surprises when I first got my first Google bill. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. What? Like, how
Yeah.
much? Like, holy crap. Like that. So knowing like how much per click and what it, and even the cost per click changes based off of timing. Like, for example, divorce filings are at the most in January and February. So Google's going to charge $7.50, $8 a click in January, February. But in June and July, that same exact click is going to cost $1.35 because they
Mhm.
raise it by demand, right?
Mm.
But have
Yeah.
a good business plan. That's where AI is going to help. Yes, you got to just do it and rip the Band-Aid off, but there needs to be some sort of structure. So the importance
Yeah.
on step one. Step two, your networking and your referral network. It's important to me, especially as a mediator, I always refer 3 names because to your point, if I refer one name and it's a stinker, it's going to come back on me, right?
Yeah.
But if I give them 3 names and they choose one of those 3 names, then they might say, hey, you might want to take this professional off your referral list, but they chose that person, right? So there are options. So I always give a minimum of 3 names for referrals for my referral.
Mm.
And then to
Interesting.
step 3, when it comes to like the judicial network, knowing your strength, if you have a weakness, let's say you're not very good at finances, then either get the education that you need to get good at it or co-mediate or have somebody
Mm.
else in your firm that that is really good. You know, finances were not my strong suit when I first started. So my business partner at the time was a certified divorce financial analyst, had a long career in finance, and I paired up with her for a reason because I knew I could learn a lot from her. And if we had a very difficult financial case, we could co-mediate that case. She would handle the finances. I handled more of the relationship part. And so know where that Achilles heel is that you provide and either fill it with education and get better at it, or know a good partner or a good friend or a good referral network that you have that you can say, hey, I have a difficult case. I need to partner up with you on this. Are you open to that? And so that's going to fill those gaps as well.
Really good point. Complement each other's strengths. Okay, 2 more
Yep.
quick things. One, I like to do this. It's sort of self-serving for my own learning. I
Mhm.
want to know about, in your practice, roadblocks, hurdles, inefficiencies that you just wish technology could solve for you that there isn't anything out for yet. Anything on your wish list?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it leads to the importance of file management. It leads to
Hmm.
the importance of organization,
Hmm.
um, having a really good software that you can use and trust, making sure that you're the ability to set tasks, automatic reminders of when to follow up on leads, things of that nature, or
Yeah.
maybe an automated generated, like an AI generated follow up on the leads. Hey,
Hmm.
weeks since we had our consultation. Have you given any special thought? Um, Anything that can be kind of automated. There's a lot of things that like
Hmm.
I'd love to borrow from people. And there was a lady that I did a continuing ed thing. She calls it follow up Friday. She follows up
Oh,
all of
nice.
her needs on Fridays. And so she
Cool.
off on her calendar from 9 in the morning till noon every Friday. That's just her following up on leads. And she follows up every week for 3 months. And then after 3 months, she sends an email that says, I don't want to bother you. I'm still here if you need me, but I'm not going to be sending you any more emails just to check in. And she varies. That's the other thing. She varies the notice. Like the first notice is more detailed. The second is, hey, just checking in,
Hmm.
and then goes like every other week. And then after a certain period of time, she finally lets it. But that's one of the mistakes I think that I did is I closed leads way too quickly. I just had a
Yeah.
call last week from people that said, hey, we had a consultation with you 3 years ago. And
Mm.
my wife really enjoyed um, you and working with you. And we're moving forward now with our divorce. We tried to work it out in therapy,
Mm.
it didn't work out. And so, like, I still probably would close that lead. 3 years is a long time. But
Yeah.
that tells you that when people are planning,
Yeah.
they're planning longer in advance.
That's right.
That I notice as to your question, what kind of software do I need to keep on track? I notice from trends that if the traffic on my website is high, I'll be like, that's weird because my phone is not ringing. So I have now noticed that
Mm.
traffic is high. I'm about to get real busy 3 months from now because that
Oh,
far in advance, people are doing research. They're
wow.
getting
Interesting.
in line. They're learning about mediation. They're learning about their options. They're learning about the paper
Mm.
so that when they finally pull that trigger 3 to 4 months from now, it makes sense. So I've noticed that trend and that's pretty consistent. So like my
Hmm.
traffic was really heavy in October. I know in January I'm going to be swamped.
Yeah.
Um, but as to like software tasks, the importance of case management software to keep you in line, especially when you've got 20, 30, 40 clients
Yeah.
and you need to keep track of everything. Like, where am I? Where's my checklist as a practitioner? And the other
Yeah.
thing is I love being able to assign tasks
Yeah.
through my file management software to my clients and say, hey,
Mm.
you're going to meet with you're going to meet with the children's pediatrician before our next appointment, or you're going to talk to the school principal, or you're going to meet
Hmm.
with your tax advisor. And I can assign that task so that
Mm.
my client can see, oh, we haven't done this yet, or you have to do your parenting class still, or whatever it is. That's important to me that they have that ability to kind of check off, because again, that also gives them that sense of accomplishment, right? When you go
Yeah.
through it in
Oh,
course, or
yeah.
when you're involved with a lawsuit, it seems like an unsurmountable task and it seems so overwhelming.
Mm.
But if you do little pieces at a time, and this is why I hate certain practitioners do full day mediations. It's okay with civil mediations, not so great for domestic and for divorce
Mm.
because it's too overwhelming to do
Mm.
everything in one setting. So I do like 5, 6, 7 sessions with clients. And I
Hmm.
give them these tasks because they feel this sense of accomplishment that we're gradually getting to the end. And that's so much easier to accept and to swallow than it is like all at once. Hey, you got
Right.
to everything today or go litigate. That's not really doing a wonderful service to the client.
Right. Right. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. And I just want to clarify. I'm not asking that. I asked that question not to promote practice, but genuinely to learn what's on people's wish lists,
Yeah, no,
where the
I think
pain
the
points are.
tasks are huge. I think um, being able to track your time, that's
Yeah.
huge. So like if I'm
Mhm.
replying through anything, I reply everything through my file management software because I want to make sure that I'm billing, right? And if it's flat fee,
Yeah.
I still track that because I want the clients to see how much time I spent on your file. It's
Yeah,
important.
it's good client relations, and
Yep.
I have a video about this. It's also good malpractice prevention or defense to even on a flat fee matter, or if you have a third party paying on a flat fee, like with legal insurance, it still makes sense to keep track of your time to describe what you did,
Yeah.
so that you're showing your work. Like, in grade
And
school
then if
math,
you do
where they
go to
want you to show your
court,
work.
exactly. And if you're going to court over fees, now you have a very detailed ledger as to,
Yeah,
hey, judge, this is how much time I spent, not, hey, Mark and I talked about this case for an hour at the water cooler. That's a little different, right?
right.
But if I
You
have
know,
actual tracking of my billable time, that's going to bode well too.
right. That's right. And I want to use you as a positive example. Another thing I talk about a lot is the placeholder email response. You have that automated.
I
So
do.
when
Yep.
I email you, I receive an automatic reply that says, I think it says like, hey, I received your email. Thank you. I check it twice a day. I respond
Yep.
as soon as I can. Is that right?
Absolutely. Because one of the things that I learned was, let's say I get back to a client 48 hours from now. I might have already lost that client. They might have already called somebody else. But even
Right.
something as simple as the automated reply, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, wow, that was quick. This person's on top of it. I
Yep.
learned that from there's an attorney in the western suburbs of Chicago. Her name's Erin Burt. She's located in Wheaton. I learned that from her. I learned a lot from Erin, actually. Erin's great. She's very involved on Instagram, and she gave up. She's an attorney, but she doesn't litigate anymore. I call those type of attorneys recovering attorneys. But she has dedicated her career now just to mediation, GAL work, and parenting coordination work.
Oh,
And
cool.
she's written a book on for children on how to understand divorce. But her business acumen is fantastic because I was talking to her and I said, listen, I'm starting to get a little burnout. And I feel like I have to work 24/7 every day of the week. And she said, no, stop now. And she was the one that kind of said, listen, like, this is what I do. It doesn't mean it's right, but this is what works for me. And she says, on Monday, I have an admin day. Monday, I do not see clients. Monday, I'm in the office, but I'm drafting documents. I'm typing up notes from sessions from the week prior. I'm working out my week's social media posts and blog entries. And Monday's my admin day. And she goes, and then I give myself 2 days off a week. And she goes, I usually take 1 day off during the week and 1 day off during the weekend because she offers weekend time. So do I with clients. And she goes, that still gives you 4 days a week to meet with clients that are flexible times, weekends, evenings, things
Mhm.
like that. But you're giving yourself 2 full days off a week, which is very important. And that admin day, you're not feeling overwhelmed of, well, when am I going to
Right.
get this paperwork done?
Right.
And so I adopted that, and it's been working really, really well.
Awesome. That's a great tip. And
Great.
so that's great for just, you know, keeping centered and grounded and balanced. And I'll say your automatic placeholder email is good, not just for prospective clients, but also good for current clients. Sometimes attorneys will receive very substantive emails from clients, a million questions, a million documents attached to review. And a mistake that a lot of attorneys make is waiting to respond until they've had a chance to review all those documents and analyze the questions and respond substantively.
Right.
Give them that placeholder email that says, I received your email and I'll get back to you on this stuff.
Yeah.
Then they don't think like they're being ghosted.
That's right. and that goes back to the software portion about sending you a lot of files over email. Do not send files over email. It's the easiest way for those things to get hacked. That's where like an encrypted client profile or portal where they can upload all those documents for you to see, like when you're doing discovery. If it's all uploaded to the portal, it's encrypted, it's safe, it's protecting you as a business owner, right? Because if your email gets hacked and now all of a sudden your clients' bank accounts and their social security number gets leaked out to the dark web, it's coming back on you, right? Now you're, to your point, malpractice insurance, or your business's insurance is going to have to cover that.
Cyber
you can
liability,
avoid all
maybe.
that. Yeah, avoid all that. Tell your clients in your agreement to Mediator, in your contract or your letter of engagement, do not send me documents via email, only through the encrypted portal, because it's going to cover your butt. I do a lot of cover your butt provisions in my contract.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a big part of the purpose. Absolutely. Use contracts for that purpose. I do small business law. I advise all small business clients to use contracts in that way. And we're no different in law firms. You absolutely should do that. That's a big part of the purpose of contracts. All right, let's take a minute to promote you. How can people find you? Do you do, is everything in person? Is some of it on the web? Is everything Indiana? And what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, great question. They can find me at keystonemediation.com. They can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me on Facebook. My business anyways on Facebook. I practice mostly in Illinois and Indiana, but I do virtual. I do in-person both. And technically, I can mediate in just about any state, depending on the state and the rules. But for the most part, you can always draft a memorandum of understanding in any state. As long as it's unsigned, you're not drafting legal documents. And that memorandum of understanding is going to satisfy the terms. And then at that point, they can turn it over to their attorney, or they can go to court with their MOU and give it to a judge. That's up to the judicial officer to enter it or not. But so you can technically mediate just about in any state.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You're such an interesting guy, and I hope that you're an inspiration to people who are thinking about making a big change, because it takes a lot of courage to make a big change, and you're somebody who has demonstrated that really well. So I hope that's an example for others.
No, thanks for having me on. One of the things that I'm always going to push mediation. I really, truly believe in it. And for the attorneys out there that are getting sick of litigating, give mediation a try. Maybe, come to Northwestern, take my class. Let's start making a difference, because it's time to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.